We are Rogue Media Sports.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It is a Doomsday podcast, a rookie minicamp special edition. Ed Werder alongside Matt Mosley as we come to you on Saturday afternoon as we tape this. And Ed Werder and I did go out to the Star in Frisco to monitor some of this minicamp. And this was the rookies, the drafted guys, as well as some of the undrafted, and then even a couple of those players that just signed with the Cowboys, or first-year type players. They were also involved in this camp. We've got some big-time interviews. Ed, one-on-one with Kellen Moore, Cowboys offensive coordinator. We also got Connor McGovern, third-round pick. Got some stuff you're going to like from him. Ed, though, I thought we'd start out real quick. Your observations. We both watched. You watched the morning practice. I watched the afternoon practice. Anything of the Tristan Hill, the guy we talked to his coach Randy Shannon about? Anything about him stand out to you from that first practice you watched?
Well, we know that Randy Shannon's basic concern with Tristan Hill during the year they spent together at Central Florida was about his attentiveness and dedication to practice. To no one's surprise, I saw no such indications as they went through their first weekend of work, having now signed their contracts. It's amazing. The Cowboy coaching staff is so good that already these players in just a weekend's worth of work have already astronomically improved from where they were when they were drafted just 10 days ago.
That's right.
It's really quite remarkable to see the progress. Yeah. But, they actually have 8 drafted players out there, and then they have 7 players that they signed as undrafted free agents who actually were graded on their draft board as, potential draft picks.
So they say.
They have 15 players that they had draft grades on, which is a pretty high number. A couple of observations. One was that Mike Weber, the running back who eventually succeeded Ezekiel Elliott at Ohio State and may do so here again very soon with the Cowboys since they drafted him to be a backup, came off the field with some kind of a knee problem, went to see Jim Maurer and was taken inside. He returned at the very end of drills. The other interesting thing is Sanjay Lal. I think he's your favorite assistant coach. He's wide receivers coach of the Cowboys. For the second day in a row, he had the wide receivers running routes, and there is no football involved. They have not been thrown a pass, and as I understand it, they will not be thrown a pass the entire weekend. They are just working on.
Sounds like the Linehan offense.
The mundane intricacies of the route tree and making sure they're doing all of those things perfectly, I guess, because there's not a thrown pass involved.
That's an interesting observation. I did not, in my short time out there in the afternoon, the security had to come after me. For a while, I was just watching it through the front doors out there, where people mill around. And some guy said, "This is a private practice, sir." And I flashed my 2018 credential. Sorry, Mr. Mosley.
You back down, huh?
Come on in.
It's always fun to back down
Join
security.
us. So, no, I love security, but the guy was doing his job, and he brought me in there, and I did get to see. I thought Tristan Hill, quick, loved some of he was hitting the dummies over there, heavy hands. He had some heavy hands, and of those defensive linemen, they were working out over there. There were only a few of them, but kind of liked it. Tony Pollard, good little burst out of Memphis. He was involved in some drills, so I had my eye on him. And then also, we talk a little bit more about this, but they've got a 6'4" corner. He looks like 6'6". He's very thin. He's long. I mean, I want to talk a tiny bit more about him because I'd love for him to make the team because this is
Chris
a weird,
Westry?
Yes, Westry out of Kentucky, I believe.
That's right.
This is long-limbed man, and I kind of liked watching him doing
it's a
his
Chris
thing.
Richard kind of
Yes.
prototype corner.
Angular, this young man is.
And you know, one other thing I thought was interesting is, and we're going to talk to Kellen Moore here momentarily. At the end of the first practice, I got him off to the side by myself as everybody else was kind of distracted and went for John Kitna, which I think is an insult to Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore, as a former backup quarterback here, like Kitna was, but Kitna's just a quarterback's coach. Moore's the guy who's supposed to be, in charge
OC.
of play calling and game planning and all of that, and yet he's left alone with me while everybody goes for John Kitna.
That is the respect people have for the Doomsday podcast. Honestly, it's like if Ed gets who he wants. I think that's why they held off.
Marinelli had a little crowd, but it was just me and Kellen Moore, and eventually the PR guy said, "Just go ahead and start then if you want to." So we did. But one thing, and this, if anything, causes me consternation about Kellen Moore, it's this. I think he's going to have to learn to assert himself more. He's a smallish guy, doesn't have a huge personality. If everything you hear is he's, very sharp mentally. But boy, Kitna has a much bigger presence and a bigger personality. And at one point at the very end, as they were running plays on offense, the tight end, the only tight end that they have here, Cody McElroy jumped prematurely, would have drawn a penalty flag. And it was not Kellen Moore who got angry and said, "Back to the huddle." It was Jason Garrett. It was Jason Garrett who was lined up behind the defense, not Kellen Moore who was lined up behind the offense and is supposed to be in charge of demanding perfection and execution out of his group. I think he's going to have to go a little ways in that regard.
He needs more of a presence, needs to be a little taller. And for Kitna at 6'3", he's got presence. And Kitna's been a head coach. On the high school level, people say, well, it's high school. Still, he's actually been a head coach at some
and he's
level.
A much older guy with a lot more NFL experience.
He's got a little more
Kellen
pedigree
Moore.
to him, for sure.
And I did talk to John Kitna more, so we'll get some insights from him on Dak Prescott and the early relationship there.
Good. Okay, we're going to do this right now. In fact, Frito Nation Productions, we're happy to be here with him in far North Dallas today. It is time to get right into it. Ed Werder takes us inside his one-on-one with Kellen Moore. Anything you need to set up here, or do you want to just go straight to the interview?
I think the first question is genius, and we should just start with that.
All right, here he is. Ed Werder with Kellen Moore, Cowboys offensive coordinator.
So 2 years ago at this time, you were out here as a player, not as a rookie, but as a quarterback, and now you're the offensive coordinator. Is it sort of surreal to you still that you've ascended this far in such a short space of time?
Yeah, it's happened a little quickly, but it's been good. I mean, I felt like, I kind of knew I wanted to go down this path, so I think naturally you were kind of preparing for it even while you were a player. The IR year in 2016 was kind of my dabble into the coaching world. I was fortunate. Yeah, I was fortunate. Scott and Sticks, Coach Wilson and Jason, obviously, they were all awesome with allowing me to kind of still be a part of it that year. And so it was kind of my first introduction. I think, that was kind of the starting point.
You were doing projects for him, right? That was Dak's rookie year, I believe, right?
Yeah. It's just,
can you describe what they had you do that was significant?
The nice thing is just staying involved with the quarterback room. Obviously, we had a unique thing. Tony got hurt. Dak was in there, and then we signed Mark as the backup. So it was kind of Dak and Mark hadn't even been in the room necessarily, any of the previous years, and so Tony wasn't around because of his back situation, and so I was fortunate. I was able to kind of still help the group in any way and do whatever I could for Scott, for Wade, for whoever, and so it was fun.
What did you do? What was your philosophy that sold Jerry and Jason on making you the new offensive coordinator?
That's a great question. I think at the end of the day, I recognize what's been good here and what's been going on here. Fortunate just because I played here, kind of understand the system that's in place, but at the same time understand some other opportunities and other things that we can explore and see what fits us best and go down those roads potentially as this thing progresses. What
would you describe your philosophy of offense as being in sort of a nutshell?
I think probably multiple. Just we'll probably present a little bit more variety, play with some tempo, and at the end of the day, you got to figure out what what our players do best and what this group does best, and suit around them, and evolve around that way. And so for so much of this is we just need to get out here together and start with a foundation, and then work from there and see what certain players can do. And you get Randall involved in this, and it's kind of you can put a system all together you want. You kind of want to just get out there with Randall and start figuring it out, and things will progress as they progress.
How important is it to involve all of Dak's skill set if you're going to get the most out of a quarterback like him? In other words, his mobility. How much will you emphasize that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, to me at the end of the day, everyone's got certain strengths, and you got to embrace those and try and capitalize on those as much as you can. And certainly Dak's mobility, his ability to play outside of the pocket, sometimes a little bit off schedule. Those are strengths of his, and you got to continue to emphasize those. And you got to continue to find those different, whether it's concepts, whether it's the way we play, that probably suits him best. And we did a lot of good things last year. I think that's the biggest thing, is we got some building blocks that we were a playoff team and had some success. And I think when Amari got into the picture, we're doing some good things, and so you certainly don't want to discount that at all. You want to recognize that and embrace it, and then from there, look at some other things that we can maybe explore.
How much of a priority is red zone improvement? I mean, you guys were one of the worst teams in the NFL somehow. With a dual threat quarterback and the NFL's leading rusher, you're one of the worst red zone teams in football.
Yeah.
How much of a priority do you attach to solving that?
Yeah, certainly that's a big thing to clean up. And felt like if you looked at it probably right at the back end of the year, we started playing a little bit better down there. But obviously it's a big project for the offseason, and study it and look at ourselves and recognize the things that we can improve, and at the same time go look down some other worlds that maybe we can dabble in, this offseason, try some different things and see where that takes us. And, you feel good about it. You feel like, optimistically we can head down some other paths and find some good stuff.
I think you could argue that this entire franchise is built around Zeke Elliott, which is unique in the NFL. It's a passing league, and your offense, at least, is the centerpiece of the running back.
Yeah.
Given that, how hard will it be to take him off the field, as it seems you guys have made a priority, drafting two running backs, of trying to protect him to some degree?
Yeah.
But he's such a good player, it's got to be hard to take him off the field.
Yeah, absolutely. You want the ball in Zeke's hand, and that a lot of good things happen when that occurs. At the same time, naturally everyone understands that position. We're still going to get him the ball plenty, and there's going to be a game where we're going to say, Zeke, you're getting 35 carries, and it's what's going to happen. There's going to be a game in December. It's going to be cold, and there's going to be up in the Northeast, and we're going to pound it, and there's other times where, hey, we can spell you a little bit in some situations, whether it's, Tony or Mike or one of the other running backs, and at the same time, we got some really versatile running backs that we can maybe play with, and, there's no rule that says two running backs can't be on the field at the same time, so I'm trying to do some of that.
How significant to you is the return of Jason Witten, and where do you see his contribution showing through the most?
Yeah, Witt's been great. He looks good, first and foremost. I think that's the most important thing. He looks good out here. And then second, obviously just him being who he is, the leadership, the just kind of the attention that naturally the players give him credit for. And, when he says something, and, I think he's going about it the perfect way. Obviously, in a year, some things evolve, some things change, and but he's awesome for the group, and I think everyone's really, really excited.
You mean that he's come back with a mindset of he's got to re-earn everything he gets now?
I think he's just got that perfect mentality. It's like naturally after a year, Dak, gets more comfortable in his role. Some of those younger lineman guys that were younger back then have gotten a little bit, and Amari and Zeke, and so I think it's a perfect blend where Witt's still going to be Witt, and he's going to have an awesome role for us, and at the same time he's allowed those other guys to continue to embrace the role that they've kind of taken on.
What do you think the challenge will be in terms of developing game plans and calling plays for a head coach who did that himself, and that's kind of been his calling card in the NFL?
Yeah, I think it's a collaborative thing, and at the end of the day, work together with everyone. I think that includes the coaching staff, obviously Coach Garrett and the rest of the staff, and then, to me, I think you also got to get some input from the players. Doesn't mean you have to go down those roads all the time, but I think it's important that, when a player believes in something and they're pretty convicted on it, usually they find a way to make it work, and so, I think it's a collaborative effort that includes everyone, and that's part of this thing is we just got to get out on the field together and start doing stuff, and then things evolve and take it where you want to take it at that point.
And there it was, the interview, Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator, and Ed Werder going one-on-one. Ed, why was I not part of that thing?
I don't really think you want me to explain that, do you?
I'm fine with it.
Your tardiness needs no explanation. I think it's kind of your calling card at this point.
Well, I mean, this was a big-time volleyball tournament. I was supposed to be kind of coaching, watching my daughter. Was running a little late, but Ed, thank you.
I don't see how it's so hard for these police officers to get confessions out of people who are consumed with guilt like you are. just mention it and you confess it right away.
I did. Oh, I don't mind confessing. Confessing to being
It's good for the soul, man.
A good dad.
Good for the soul.
It is.
So back to the couple points that Kellen Moore made in the interview. I think it's going to be quite easy for this offense to improve dramatically, and that's because the real failure with the offense was in the most important area of the field. In the red zone, as you heard me mention, they were one of the worst teams in football. They scored 24 touchdowns out of 50 trips in the red zone. That's a 48% success rate, and that was better only than the Jets, the Jaguars, and the 49ers. Those three teams all won like 4 or fewer games. That's what the Cowboys were able to overcome to win their division and make the playoffs. Their offense, in terms of scoring situations, operated like one of the worst teams in football. And so I don't think it's going to hurt. It's going to be very difficult for them to improve it. And I think Kellen Moore will be imaginative. And you heard him say there in the interview that it's an unusual thing given that, the Cowboys have the leading rusher in football 2 of the last 3 years, Ezekiel Elliott, and a dual threat quarterback in Dak Prescott. And yet they've been so inept in the red zone, the most important part of the field. And I think Jason Witten's return will help that. I believe 5 of his 6 touchdown catches in 2017, his last year with the Cowboys, or so we believed at the time. All those came in the red zone, so he can have an effect down there as well. But I think they can solve a lot of these problems and become a much better team if they do become just mediocre in the red zone.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping they would let Witten participate in this rookie camp since he's been away. I mean, I felt like they should have given him a waiver, and he should have been down there. Like you said, only one tight end, and that tight end's a 25-year-old guy who came from Oklahoma State, who's pitched. I think he played basketball. He tried to play basketball at Oklahoma State, and then he finally tried to play football for them.
These are the guys that Jerry used to have try out for quarterback.
Yes. Yeah,
Chad Hutchinson and Quincy Carter and your guy.
This guy, Drew Henson.
Henson, yeah.
Yes. Tony didn't like the fact that I spent so much time with Drew Henson. I told you a story one time about playing. He played baseball, then he played football, and I was out golfing with him one time, and I was having a decent day. He was not having a good day on the course out there at the what's the one where the Tour 18? No, but what's the one out in the
Trophy
Colony?
Club?
What's the one out in the Colony?
Tribute.
The Tribute. We're playing the Tribute, and I just called somebody. I texted somebody, and I said, I've found another sport Drew can't play. So, it's very fascinating.
You texted Romo with that, didn't you?
What's that? No, that's
Romo.
right. Tony, Drew can't play this either. No, I love the fact that you were kind of hitting on some of these red zone type things. I know you were going to dig in on this. What's interesting to me is, what the Cowboys want us to focus on is, he's been in the quarterback room with Dak from the start. And that one year you guys talked about it, he did some stuff while he was hurt with Dak, and then he was together with him even when Sanchez was there. And so they have this history to sort of fall back on. The cynic in me says, this guy's football mentor, his football daddy, as we would say, was Scott Linehan. Everything since he got into the NFL and was the Detroit Lions, learning up under Matt Stafford, and that's where Scott Linehan used to be the offensive coordinator. That was under Linehan. Linehan wanted to bring him here as a player, then brought him up as a coach, and all of a sudden It's like, Linehan, we're done with you. But your protege, we think he's ready to be the offensive coordinator. So I still feel like it's strange, and in some ways, I thought what you said was interesting. You thought maybe he needs to have a little more presence or be a little more demanding to sort of overcome some of these boyish looks that he has. But from what even that short time you witnessed in practice today, you kind of thought Garrett was the one kind of standing there. If he was going to get on with somebody.
That's one example where you would normally expect the offensive coordinator to become upset at the failure to execute a simple situation, and they're usually very irritated when there's a pre-snap penalty, as this clearly was. And I just think Kellen Moore has got to take ownership of those kinds of things in front of the players for them to give him the credibility and attention that is going to be necessary if they're all going to succeed. And it is a little unusual, and you're right that Scott Linehan was unquestionably the Kellen Moore sponsor. He was Kellen Moore's sponsor in Detroit, and he was Kellen Moore's sponsor.
Sounds like he was in AA
Dallas.
or something.
No. I mean, he's the reason that he got the opportunities he did, and he was protected by Linehan, and he got chances to play quarterback because of Linehan. He got chances to be a coach because of Linehan, and now Linehan's out. Now, Linehan and Garrett have a long history together, and they obviously share a belief system in the way, in its essence, a philosophical compatibility about the way an offense runs. Well, I think it's possible that Kellen Moore has that too, but he also can be more creative in his thinking or more bold in his play calling than either of the two of them have been. And I think the most interesting statement that we have heard the entire offseason was from Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones not only mandated offensive change and the implementation of new concepts and creative thinking, but he promoted Kellen Moore in a year where he did not extend Jason Garrett, who, oh, by the way, his calling card is as an offensive play caller himself, and he's again denied this offseason the chance to call plays with his own fate hanging in the balance here. But Jerry said, look, and he said this publicly, he said, if you and John Kitna, if your ideas are not being implemented, by the head coach, come to me. Come to me. Circumvent the head coach and come to me, and I will take care of it. So
do what players have been doing for 20 years.
Deion got here.
Back to Deion Sanders. Just come straight to me.
Go straight to the owner's suite. Right from the locker room to the owner's suite. That's the way to get things done. It always has been. But I think it's interesting that he basically told Garrett effectively to stand down, that you're going to work with what these guys want to go with, and that's who we're going to be, because the way you've tried to do it just hasn't produced the results we want.
It's like, I think when you put it like that, Jason Garrett's title should be like head coach / assistant. I mean, it's like he's still got the head coach title, he's still got the head coach pay, but they've been given an avenue to go to Jerry. Hey, guys, come to me if you're not getting your ideas in there. And that's interesting to me. Even your talk today, you visited with John Kitna, and I know some people are surrounding John Kitna, but the fact that Kitna is the quarterback's coach, he's going to be working with Dak on a daily basis. It's going to be an interesting quarterback room. I mean, think about that. You're going to have Kellen hanging out in there, offense coordinator. Jason's going to want to have more say. His job's on the line. If he's going to ever call plays, it's getting back calling plays this season, and then you're going to have Kitna, who is no shrinking violet. This is a busy quarterback room, Ed, and I think you were able to visit a little bit with the former Cowboys and Cincinnati Bengals quarterback, Johnny Kitna.
Yeah, and the interesting thing that Kitna talked about was, the biggest influence on him offensively has been Mike Martz. And we know Mike Martz was a pretty wide open play caller. The greatest show on turf, that was his team with Kurt Warner and Marshall Faulk and Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce and that prolific offense. So I think he's another guy who's going to bring a lot of great ideas to invigorate the offense. And like you said, it'll be interesting to see who winds up having the strongest voice, because when I talked to Mike Martz about John Kitna, and when I talked to Bill Polian about Kitna, and Kitna was going to coach in this league that went under just recently before the Cowboys hired him, but he said that Kitna has better potential to be a successful NFL head coach than a lot of the guys who were just hired as head coaches in the most recent offseason cycle. So that's a pretty profound statement about a guy who's just starting his NFL coaching career as a quarterback's coach, and he's working for a guy with really no experience as a play caller in Kellen Moore, and a guy in Jason Garrett who has extensive play calling experience but isn't allowed to use it under Jerry Jones. So it is a unique situation. Now, the other thing I thought that was interesting that came from Kitna was his first impressions of Dak Prescott. And after he finished his interviews, I had a chance to stand there and just talk to Kitna. And one of the interesting things he told me was just how much Dak embraces being coached and how open he is to new ideas. In other words, you've got a quarterback who's won 33 starts in his first 3 seasons in the NFL, started every game, since he's been drafted, even though that was not the expectation, and was a rookie of the year. And yet he doesn't look at himself like, hey, I'm about to be, get $100 million and I'm one of the best quarterbacks in football. Very few players have won more than I have at this point in their careers. I don't really need to be coached. It's quite the opposite, actually. He said that the first day, remember he hadn't even been officially announced as an assistant coach on Garrett's staff when he went to the Pro Bowl, and he wasn't allowed to speak to anybody, but he said he sat on the bus going back from practice the first day, and Dak walked in and sat down next to him in an open seat and said, let's work together on this, make me better. And so he's very open-minded about that. And Kitna's reputation is for being very meticulous in terms of throwing mechanics, which could be invaluable to Dak, because I think we all know it has seemed over in the last 3 years there are times when he misses a lot of throws that most NFL quarterbacks make because his mechanics are not always the way they need to be. And
I think that's interesting. I mean, imagine Kitna, if he could really help him, because honestly, Kellen Moore can relate to him in a lot of ways, but he's so much shorter at 5'10" or 5'11". I mean, the way it was kind of remarkable that he stayed around as long as he did in the NFL. And to your point earlier about Mike Martz, that was at Detroit when those two were together. Mike Martz was the offensive coordinator in Detroit when Kitna was quarterbacking, and you'll famously or infamously remember Detroit came in and just put it on the Cowboys one year, and I think it was Kitna who was later on a radio interview clowning on the Cowboys, in particular Brady James, basically saying something to the effect of he had no clue even where to line up. We were just basically pointing at number 56 and just kind of going wherever he was, which was not fun for poor Brady James. The other thing about Kitna is humble beginnings. I mean, he played at Central Washington. I think he was an undrafted quarterback, perhaps, out of Central Washington, and Dak was drafted in the 4th round, but pretty, based on how great of a college career Dak had, 4th round was kind of humbling for him. So, obviously, Kitna went on to have a really nice NFL career. And, honestly, even when Carson got to Cincinnati, he didn't immediately start because Kitna was that good. Kitna was still there, and he was able to train. Kitna was also important for Tony at one point. I think he helped Tony finally understand this swashbuckling, constantly trying to make plays, that every once in a while the position was so important that it was okay to rely on your defense, and that the entire organization in a lot of ways hung on your every thought process and action. And that was Kitna who really drove that point home to Tony Romo.
And beyond the mechanics of it, it's the thought process, I think, where Kitna's experience as a player in this league can really have an effect on Dak making a quantum leap. I think everybody questions how well he reads the field and reacts to the defense. And one of the things Kitna mentioned to me today was, there are plays where you could basically pre-snap looking at the defense, you can't get to this guy. The defense is taking that away. You have zero chance of making a play to that particular receiver against this defensive alignment. And he said, so he's got to realize that just erase that, even though maybe your progression is supposed to have you look at that, don't ever even look there. Just go to whatever's next or take whatever is before that. That guy is not an option on that play. So I think anything that can expedite Dak's decision-making and allow him to make quicker decisions with the football will have a great deal of benefit to him. And then getting away from the quarterback position, one other thing I thought was interesting in terms of mentioning was, Kellen Moore talking about the commitment this team suddenly has to taking Zeke Elliott off the field, their best player. They've created the whole organization around Zeke Elliott, but now they're committed with 2 players drafted at the running back position to making sure they don't overuse him. Which seems folly to me. I think he's a very durable guy, led the NFL in carries. Now, I don't think he's going to catch 77 passes again like he did last year, because now you've got Witten back. You have Randall Cobb out of the slot. You got a full year of Amari Cooper, and maybe in those situations you can use a guy like Pollard.
Yeah, they love to talk about jet sweeps and, Tavon Austin, how many touches we're going to get him. And I promise you, we get to training camp, Tony Pollard will be, oh my goodness, camp phenom. Look at Pollard. Look how quick he is. But the DNA of this team, and you and I have talked about this before, it goes back to Emmett. Was that a guy like, poor Sherman? Was it Sherman
Williams.
Sherman Williams, yeah, the paint guy. The guy from Alabama they brought in. I mean, my gosh, Derek Lassick. Why were they only bringing in Alabama backs? Everybody I'm naming was from Alabama. But there was never a true, oh my gosh, this guy's going to be. I mean, even Hambrick toward the end. My goodness, there was never a true complimentary back. He was also always going to be the bell cow. Same thing with Murray. Who was the complimentary back to DeMarco Murray? There was none.
They've
he
had the
wouldn't
leading
come off
rusher
the field.
in the NFL 3 of the last 5 years.
This is their DNA. This is who they are. The only time they ever shuttled these guys was when they had Felix Jones and Marion Barber, and neither one of them was that great. So it's like, let's get them both out there. They were sort of had their hand forced on this. Okay, Ed, anything else before we get to, I want to let folks hear from Connor McGovern, who comes from a long legacy, obviously, of political heroes in this country. No, he's not that. He's not part of that.
No, the only other thing I would say was Kellen made reference when I asked him about Jason Witten to the fact that sort of, the team from a leadership point of view has evolved in the year that Witten's been away, and now it's different as he returns. So he's been very artful in terms of not forcing himself back into the role that he had in 2017 as the premier leader on the offensive side of the ball and maybe the most influential player in the entire locker room. Because, opportunities were created for Zach Martin and most notably for Zeke and Dak. And those players have run away with this thing now. And so he made it clear to me that this is Dak Prescott's offense now, it's not for Jason Witten to be looked at as the penultimate leader on the team.
You said artful, made me think of the Artful Dodger. You know where that comes from in literary circles? The Artful Dodger.
Please educate me.
Dickens. That's a little Charles Dickens character. Yes. It is the Doomsday podcast. And
you never know what you're going to learn that you didn't need to know.
It's okay. I'd like to tell our folks about our lunch, but right now we need to get to Connor McGovern. This is when I walked in today a little late, as usual, Ed was over there. People were surrounding the third-round pick out of Penn State, Connor McGovern, who can play center, can play both guard spots. Here is my interview with Connor McGovern.
What year did you say you shot up? You had your huge growth spurt?
Going into my junior year of high school.
So, okay. Yeah, I'm also a late bloomer.
Yeah.
Still waiting. Still waiting.
Right, yeah.
Really?
Exactly. Could you make an old-fashioned?
Not the best with all this stuff, but I think I could.
If you had to.
Yeah.
Is that a family business? So really?
No, so my great-grandparents purchased it back in the 50s and all that, and then now they're both passed away, so they're all their children. So my grandma, my great-aunt, and my 2 great-uncles run it, basically.
Do they serve pretty good food as well, or is it just mostly...
It's
okay.
a very blue-collar bar like that.
Yeah. So you're getting a lot of guys coming off the shift, the late shift or whatever. What time does it open in the every day?
It opens around 8 or 9.
8 or 9 in the morning? Okay.
Oh, no, in the morning?
Some places are like that, and, blue collar.
I think it depends on the day when it actually opens, but I'm not sure day to day.
I missed a little bit earlier. Did you, of the center guard, obviously your versatility was a big attraction to the Cowboys. Is there any... of all those spots, where do you right now at this very moment feel the most comfortable? Or you don't want to say that?
I don't know where I feel most comfortable because I played so far. I've been left guard, right guard, center. So I'm just comfortable at all 3 right now.
But snapping it,
That's
fine.
Yeah.
You never added the deep snapping to your arsenal, did you?
I did not.
So, do you, now that you're here though, I'm trying to think, is there any other Penn State guys besides Sean on the roster?
No, just us 2.
Okay. I'm a Baylor guy, so our coach now was played at Penn State.
Yep.
Matt Rule. Yeah. Where were you between when you were being recruited? Obviously, you ended up at Penn State. Was Notre Dame in the mix, or were?
No, they were one of the only schools in the country not to contact me. So, so it was down between North Carolina, Michigan State, and Stanford for me, besides Penn State.
Whoa, some good ones, though.
Yeah.
What were the two it came down to?
North Carolina and Penn State.
Okay. Did you do one of those announcements where you put the two caps up there or anything like that?
I did not do that. I just went down to Penn State with my whole family, and both my brothers came in and just did it in person.
Yeah. They used to around here do it from a hot tub. They would make announcements. And
I'm not, if you couldn't tell, I'm not big into social media and all that, so I don't really care.
Do you have a Twitter account?
I did. The only reason I made a Twitter was back in high school for the whole coaching reason. That's how they could contact you. And I just had to make an Instagram last week, so.
What's your Twitter handle? You even know?
I actually don't know at the top of my head. That's how little I use it.
You should follow Ed Werder. He's a high volume tweeter. Right. Yeah, he's got a lot going on. In this little rookie mini camp, what has been, is it mostly, I know you guys aren't even putting helmets on for the most part and doing all that. Is it mostly a lot of classroom heavy kind of thing?
Yeah,
or
just
getting a playbook?
Diving full head first right into the playbook, trying to learn everything, all the calls, then just get on the field, working footwork and everything, just redoing all the basics on the field too.
What are your first impressions of Mark Colombo, a guy who obviously played in the offensive line?
I think he's a terrific coach, and I like how he's more in your face. He's always correcting every little thing. I just think I fit right in with how he coaches.
You're a perfectionist from a technique standpoint.
Yes,
that's
sir.
what he emphasizes too.
Yep.
So you had a feel, like you said, you watched some Cowboys even when you were at Penn State, that this is what this team did, is build through the offensive line, how important it was. But now the build-up, though, how much contact? Who was your main contact point with the Cowboys?
The first time I ever talked to the Cowboys was when I got the call at draft.
That's it, right? Yeah. So it wasn't like most times here we're especially first 3 rounds, people that have been here and all.
Yeah.
So it was a bit surprising to you.
It was very surprising. I did not expect that phone call at all.
Who were you expecting? Who had shown the most interest in you?
There was a couple different teams, but the Cowboys were definitely at the bottom of that list. And then all of a sudden, I was texting my agent back and forth. And he's like, Cowboys are interested. I was like, wait, what is it? This was not on the radar at all.
Yeah. Well, our man Daniel Jeremiah at the NFL Network was way high.
Big McGovern fan.
Big time McGovern guy.
George McGovern back in the day.
Are you aware of George McGovern's work?
I am. No relation. Though.
Do you know his slogan?
I do not know the slogan.
When he ran? Do you remember? No. I don't know. Kalishaw was tweeting about this the other day. Well, congratulations. Ed Werder, Matt Mosley here. We do some stuff around here, including the Doomsday podcast. Do you know what the Doomsday... Do you know what that means in regards to the Cowboys?
I do not.
Okay. That is the famous, they called it the Doomsday defense.
Doomsday defense.
Back in the day. So Ed Too-Tall Jones,
Yep.
Tom Landry, the flex defense, but Harvey Martin, John Dutton, the Manster. You should, we'll come up with a nickname for you. McGovern. It needs to be political. Yeah, we'll give it some thought. Good to meet you.
I appreciate it. Nice meeting you guys, too.
Yeah, okay.
And there he was, Connor McGovern, Penn State rookie, third-round pick for the Cowboys. So really glad to be able to bring you some of this today. Connor McGovern, third-round pick. And, Ed, I did like the fact that as I was asking, hey, let's get some Ed and I'd like to visit with Tristan Hill, the second-round pick, number 56 overall. We'd love to get a visit with him. And I was told, and we've got great relationships with the PR department, but they said, well, he talked yesterday. They only have 2 days of media availability. So he talks one day, and they're like, that's enough. That's enough. Tristan doesn't need to do anymore. Oh, my goodness. It was kind of fun to see Larry Allen Jr., the Hall of Famer himself, Larry Allen from the Cowboys, his son. Did he go to Harvard? Did he play at Harvard? And it was like some kind of bioscience or biomedical engineering major. It's an unbelievable type thing. But he was an undrafted.
He's a better interview already than Larry is. I don't think he's anywhere close to being the offensive lineman that his father was. And he probably never will be. It's probably too much to ask of almost anybody.
He doesn't really have the frame that Larry. Larry was even from Sonoma State, the second-round pick that the Cowboys brought in whatever that would have been, 1991 or 92. Might have been 92. He was a monster of a man, and he was already incredibly strong. This youngster seems like he'll make a good biomedical engineer. is what I would say.
I wouldn't talk about Larry Allen's son like
no,
that.
I love.
You made the mistake
Larry.
of going to Larry's house one time and you keep saying things like that, and Larry might show up at your door.
Oh, that's right. Uninvited, I'll say. I went to Larry's door. He was skipping voluntary workouts.
mean?
Yeah, with the great Bill Parcells, and the Morning News felt like we had to get to the bottom of it, and so it's like, hey, don't worry about severing your relationship with Larry forever. Get over there and go to the door.
And you know what?
Be a good boy.
I think it was during the same point in his career that Larry was really kind of thinking about prematurely retiring from football, and suddenly decided he was not going to go with the team to a preseason game in Pittsburgh. And Jerry was, as you can imagine, just all out of sorts about what to do about this.
Yeah.
And so he did what he should have done and what the Cowboys always do in an emergency, and they broke the emergency glass. They broke that, and Jerry called up Michael Irvin. And he asked Michael to come back to Dallas, wherever he was in Miami, and come talk some sense into Larry Allen. And so Michael, of course, being Michael had other plans. Michael's weekend was already full.
Sure, yeah.
And I think he was going to the Bahamas or something. And Michael said he made a deal with Jerry that if he came back and gave up his weekend, Jerry had to give him use of Jerry's private plane the following weekend so Michael could go have a fun adventure that he was now passing up. And Jerry agreed, because he would have agreed to anything to get Larry Allen back on the field and in uniform. So Michael drives over to Larry's house and gets out of the car and walks up to the door and walks in and finds Larry sitting there, and he goes full Michael Irvin on him, like, okay, big man, so you're done football. Okay, so I know you wouldn't just walk away from this enormous paycheck with no plans for how to, take care of your family going forward. So tell me, what's your $16 million a year job you got all lined up that you're leaving football for? And before you knew it, Larry Allen was back in a Cowboys uniform. So
that's good. Right over there. That's Michael Irvin. Yeah, he can do some convincing, but it didn't take
talk
much.
a lot of people into anything.
Yeah,
which was also his biggest downfall.
Yeah, exactly. It's good. It was good and bad. Kind of a catch-22. Now let me Ed. Last thing I want to share with you: this thought out there now. Stephen Jones was added again at the recent sponsors golf tournament out at a place you play some golf, Cowboys Golf Club.
What a place!
And nice place out there. Good food and all that kind of thing. But I think it was raining the other day. So they were out there visiting with folks in the assembled media, the ones that weren't crowded around Tony Romo as he played in his, the Byron Nelson. But they were all huddled up around Stephen Jones. And he made the argument about Dak and Amari, saying, I hope they are paying attention that a lot of these former Cowboys players end up in the TV booth and get some lucrative endorsements because of their ties to the Cowboys.
So that makes up for taking less money to play.
So maybe they'll be more willing to take a non-max deal. Ed, if Amari's agent, if Dak's agent, if those guys hear this, Todd France, will this have any impact on them at all?
No, but I think I'm not offended by Stephen Jones making that argument, and I'm sure the players aren't either. And there's actually some truth in all of that. I just think it's a concern for the guy who's got to manage the salary cap, because now trying to win something they haven't yet won with the same group of players becomes all the more difficult, because now it costs more. And it's going to cost substantially more. And I don't know yet if we know how all of this is going to affect everybody on the roster. For example, we know now that they've signed DeMarcus Lawrence that their next two priorities are Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper. And that Zeke Elliott, because he was a first-round pick and they had a fifth-year option on him, is being kind of pushed into the background and expected to wait. And I just don't think that Zeke Elliott, given what he's accomplished in the league already, given his importance to the Cowboys franchise, is going to sit there this offseason and watch DeMarcus Lawrence become one of the highest paid defensive ends in football, Dak Prescott become one of the highest paid quarterbacks in football. Amari Cooper become one of the highest paid wide receivers in football. And he's just going to sit there and go, well, I got to wait 2 more years.
Yeah.
And then they'll take care of me. You can't do that if you're a running back because they've got the shortest career of any of those players. And he's entitled to be paid on the basis of what he's accomplished. And if Todd Gurley gets $45 million guaranteed, then I hate to tell you, no matter what his future in broadcasting might be or how much he's saving on his state income tax, Zeke Elliott's going to be right when he demands to be paid more than $45 million guaranteed. And I could see that being an issue in training camp or sooner.
This coming training camp. Well, it's interesting because right now...
Is he going to sit there and let Dak Prescott get $65 million guaranteed and DeMarcus Lawrence get $65 million guaranteed and Amari Cooper get whatever he's going to get and he's just going to be satisfied with the money?
I don't think, but again, he's going to make, I'm talking about running backs and what... in his fifth-year deal or whatever the option is,
like
he'll make $9 million. Which Dak has been making in his first 3 years like $600,000 a year. So based on what he's accomplished and all the wins he's had, he's been severely underpaid. I don't know. I mean, the Cowboys decided not to pay DeMarco Murray. They let him walk.
I'm just going to tell you that now I'm a suspicious sort, okay? I don't always just believe what I'm told, and I'm not saying you do either. But I'm a little skeptical. All of a sudden, they draft 2 running backs, one of whom replaced Zeke at Ohio State. Now, I think Zeke is one of the best players in the NFL, and the whole franchise is built around his success. And I just don't think that – I don't see what the Cowboys' argument can be once they sign these other 2 players, Amari and Dak, what their argument can be for Zeke to have to wait. He's a 2-time NFL rushing champion. He's irreplaceable or has been on the roster to this point. And the Cowboys have established their own precedent of paying players in this situation before with the Tyron Smith and Travis Frederick contracts and the Zach Martin contract. They made those guys the highest paid players at their respective positions after 3 seasons in the NFL when they were under no obligation to do so.
This is a different, as you well know.
This is Jerry and Steven.
But this is a different type position, and you take all that punishment, especially if you play here. Now, he saved some time because he was suspended for half that season. He was able to save some of his legs there, but I'm not certain. Now, he could go Le'Veon Bell and just hold out and force something. He could go Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith held out.
Well, Emmitt Smith was not signed. Emmitt Smith honored his contract and then refused to agree to the terms Jerry was offering at the time. So Emmitt finished his contract. So he didn't hold out. He was not under contract that year in 1992. He was not under contract in 1992.
He was just going to be playing on what? If they'd have started that season, he was just like, hey, sorry, we don't have a deal. And
he didn't have a deal.
Okay. My goodness, that is weird to think about, that was the situation there. It wasn't him saying, I don't want to play for this price this year. With Zeke, see, they sit there and go, Zeke, $9 million is not bad for running backs in this league. And Zeke will go, Gurley's making huge money, and Cowboys will come back.
Bell's making huge money.
Yeah, well, Bell just gave up huge money while sitting out. And then David Johnson, they paid huge money, I believe, to, didn't they, in Arizona? And he got hurt and missed a whole season. A problem with these running backs.
And that's why the running back wants a new contract whenever he can justifiably ask for one.
Exactly. And so that
and the more you use me, this is Le'Veon Bell's argument, right? You're going to run me into the ground and leave me with nothing. I'm not going to have, nobody's going to want me. I'll be useless. I'll have had so many carries that nobody will see that I can perform beyond the age of 30. Well, I think
they're going to say to Zeke, we had to sign our 33-year-old linebacker, Sean Lee. We needed a Sam linebacker. We needed a third linebacker, and you're going to have to wait. And by the way, in the waiting in the wings are Byron Jones, who's emerged as the best cornerback on the team by far.
With no interceptions.
I know you love to bring that up, but he certainly grades out extremely well. Did he still not have any?
He had none.
Did he have none? Oof. I like this new guy. Say his name again. The kid from Kentucky. I watched him today. 6'4" cornerback. I mean, long arms. This man will put his arms on you. Has a little trouble getting out of a break. Has a little, but I love the man. Once he puts his arms on you, you're done. Love this player. I mean,
he's
for
richer
the
than
30
Richard
minutes.
Sherman, right?
He's got kind of what you call the so he's got dreads, but then when he's playing, like today with no helmet, he puts the dreads up on top, kind of has a man bun type thing. This guy, and it even gives him a taller appearance. They list him at 6'4". I guarantee you he's 6'5". I mean, it's a 6'5" cornerback. Get this man on the roster.
I'll tell you the other guy that impressed me, and he's one of a kind out there himself, is the only safety in camp is Donovan Wilson, the Texas A&M player drafted in the 6th round. He looks like kind of a guy who reacts well to the ball in the air, and that's the kind of guy they need back there. They need some kind of a ball hawk back in the deep secondary, and you only have to beat out Jeff Heath to get on the field, so I give this guy a chance.
Did you see who just signed a huge contract with the Dolphins? That Xavier Howard,
which reset the market for Byron Jones.
But one of the reasons he got huge money and got $75 million in that deal over
5 years, I think.
4 or 5 seasons is that he gets a ton of interceptions. He gets his hands on football and he makes the catch. You know, remind me where he played college football.
Howard?
His name's Howard.
Oh, maybe that's where I got confused.
Baylor. Yeah, he's a Baylor kid. Xavier Howard. Congratulations.
Well, but the Cowboys had Rico Gathers instead.
To the X-Man. Cowboys went for – they need to extend him, by the way. Got to get him.
I think they did that about 4 years ago.
They've extended him too far already. It is the Doomsday Podcast. Closing thoughts, Ed, on our trip to the rookie minicamp? Anything in closing?
Well, I really can't think of anything that I haven't said. And with the Zeke thing, I'm not trying to create a problem where there isn't one. I just think it's something that needs to be watched and could emerge as the major story of training camp.
No, you've never created a problem where there didn't need to be one. I've never seen you do that on Twitter in your life. Ed, by the way, congratulations. You were your alma mater,
Northern Colorado.
You gave the commencement
I sent these youngsters on their way into the working world with words of wisdom.
That's a pretty cool deal. And that's not a tiny school. Like, how many people do they have in the senior class, probably?
I believe more than 1,400 graduates.
Jeez. That's good. I mean, that's a good group. And so that means all the parents and everybody else. I bet you were speaking in front of about 4,000 or 5,000 people.
The stadium was full. I know going over there, the president of the school, very nice man. And he made the point that, boy, I wish our stadium was as full for football games.
Oh, that's awesome.
He said that they were planning to have 9 commencement addresses next fall instead of games.
That's right. Or you have to show up for all of them. That's pretty cool. And you gave a shout out to your wife, Jill. She had to be feel pretty cool about that up there being mentioned. Haven't gotten to listen to the whole speech. Hope that Doomsday did get a shout out.
You know what? It was mentioned by the president in my introduction.
He did say part of the Doomsday podcast. I love it. I know that means the world to me. Frito Nation Productions, a really strong trip. So congratulations on that, Ed.
That's quite an honor.
That is a very big honor, and most people do not get to give commencement speeches. And I don't know.
I actually saw that I was ranked number 7 in I think it's like the Denver equivalent of D Magazine is called Westward. And they ranked me number 7 among the most famous alumni at UNC, which is fine. I was behind Captain Sully Sullenberger, who saved lives. He saved a plane full of people. I got no argument with that. I can't beat that. I think number 2 is James Michener, well-known author.
Yeah, prolific author.
And obviously he donated more than I have, which almost everybody's donated more than I have because I've given nothing but my time, because that's really all I have. But they named the library after him, so I imagine he's donated a significant sum of money for that to be so. Now I would quarrel with a couple of
he's just famous. He's just flat out. He doesn't have to donate anything.
I know he's a novelist.
Yes.
A very accomplished novelist. I'm not arguing with that one either. Now, the one I would argue with is Reed Doughty. The Washington he replaced Sean Taylor with the Washington Redskins at safety.
Yeah.
He's ahead, here's the argument I would make. He's not just ahead of me. He's ahead of Vincent Jackson. Vincent Jackson was a much better receiver than Reed Doughty was a defensive back in the NFL. It's not even close.
I can tell this is bothering you. I will write a letter to the editor. What is this thing called? Westward Magazine?
Westward Magazine. I'm 7th. I'm happy to be there. I never would have. Coming out of Longmont High School, if you'd have told me I'd ranked 7th in anything, I would have taken it in a heartbeat. But That's the way they have it. I'm just telling you the way it is.
Right now at Baylor, it's Singletary, Wingo, Mosley. That's the way they do it.
What about Abercrombie?
Baylor Live. Abercrombie's 4.
Oh,
and
okay.
we're proud of Walter and what all he's accomplished. Hey, proud of all you guys for listening to the Doomsday Podcast Special Rookie Minicamp Edition. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Lights are shining, stockings have been hung. You're praying for your daughter, lighting candles for your son. They're living in the city now, you don't see them anymore. This year will not be like the ones before.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.